The good partners is crucial. I see partners who really make the difference in the country itself.
I think one big reason behind that, they are understanding very well the local circumstances, the culture, the needs on the ground.
The personal conversation, how are you doing? And what is happening in your situation? And how are you dealing with the following situation? Because we are struggling with this. These kind of conversations offer a lot of space to understand and to make progress.
What I always try to achieve is to have a personal relationship. If you know the project manager that is connected to the project you are implementing personally, it is again easier to get connection and to get an answer or to get your message across than if you just talk to a kind of anonymous person. So I think the lesson learned is that we should bring back as much as possible the personal connections in communicating.
Il faut être un bon manager pour pouvoir coordonner un projet comme ça. Et j'avoue que c'est une fierté que de diriger un projet, de coordonner plutôt un projet avec autant de partenaires. Ce n'est pas gagné d'avance, c'est un grand défi. Mais le défi, nous sommes en train de le relever. Et c'est ça ce dont je suis le plus fier.
Good morning, good afternoon for some people. Welcome everyone to this Building Sustainable Partnership session as part of the Orange Knowledge Program Partner Days. I'm very happy to see many people coming in at the moment. So let's get started to make it a very successful session. And first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Matthijs Landsmeer, and I'm a country program manager for the countries of Bangladesh and Myanmar. And together with my colleagues working in the working group, we are organizing the thematic sessions of the OKP Partner Days. And the objective of the OKP Partner Days is to be able to discuss with partners how the projects are going, what they think of the Orange Knowledge Program, and to share experiences and lessons learned, which I think will benefit all of us in the work we are doing. So welcome everyone. This session will specifically be discussing how to build sustainable partnerships. And I think it's a very broad term, sustainable partnerships. So I think it's very interesting to discuss with all of you, how do you define partnerships? What do you think is important within partnerships? And how do you build partnerships with your partners in all different countries? We operate in around 54 countries. So how do you build partnerships that go across borders? Furthermore, what is important in partnerships is the term equality. And what do we mean with that, and how do you put this in practice, equality in partnerships? Another question that will be discussed today is how do you sustain the partnerships even after project end? A project has the objective to provide results not only during the project, but also after the end of the project. Another relevant question is how can partnerships be improved within the Orange Knowledge Program? So I think these are very interesting topics to discuss with you all today. And I would like to go through some house rules to make this session as smooth as possible. And then I would like to introduce my colleagues that will present the rest of the session. So first of all, the house rules is one of them is that your mic has been muted automatically. So please use the chat box as much as possible if you have any question. And myself and my colleagues will take a look at this chat box and see if we can ask this question in the discussions we will have. And if you would like to explain your question yourself, please feel free to indicate this in the chat box as well. The entire session will be recorded. So if you don't want to appear on the screen while being recorded, please turn off your video during this meeting. And if your connection is lagging, please turn off your video as well. Yeah, the other thing is, I think this is quite obvious, but please stay on topic when you ask your questions. So please refer your questions to the topics that are being discussed in the presentations and in the discussions. And if you have any specific questions about the Orange Knowledge Program, you can send them by email as well, okp@nuffic.nl, or through your, of course, through the contact you already have. Yeah, this is something I already explained. Please, if you want to say something, do it through the microphone. In that case, you can be unmuted. And last but not least, you can also share about this event and your thoughts on that on social media. So please use the hashtags and the @NufficGD on Twitter, for instance, Nuffic Global Development on LinkedIn, and the hashtags which are shown here on the screen. Maybe one more thing before we get to the program. It would be very nice to take a digital picture of all of you being here. So if you would be open for that, please put on your video for once, and then we can take a group picture to see the variety of participants we have participating. So please put on your cameras, and then if I understand correctly, my colleagues will make a picture. Please all smile. I think we are there, are we? Yes, let's continue with the program. Yeah, so first of all, we will start with an introduction by Juba Boshoff. Juba is head of the Nuffic office in South Africa and also responsible for Southern Africa. So she will provide her perspectives on building sustainable partnerships in the region. And she will also take us along with some poll questions yeah, as a warming up in the topic of sustainable partnerships. After that, Henk van de Heuvel and Nusrat Aman. Henk van de Heuvel from VU, the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, and Nusrat Aman from the Ayat Skill Development Center in Dhaka, Bangladesh, will elaborate on how they define partnerships, what does equality and sustainability mean within these partnerships, and also elaborate on a project they are running currently in Bangladesh. And then we'll have 10 minutes for a Q&A moderated by Juba Boshoff. So please already start asking questions if you have any questions during the presentations. After this, a presentation of Linda Maat will be done. Linda Maat is working at the Hanse Hogeschool Groningen, and she's working on several projects around the world. And currently she's in Tanzania, and she will present about how good partnerships are built and maintained, because that's a very important point. And she will provide some practical examples and perspectives on how they do it within Hanse Hogeschool and their partners. This will be followed by another Q&A from moderated by Juba. So there will be questions, of course, for the presenter Linda Maat, but also time for questions from your side. And we will end this session by a wrap-up discussion. So the topics that will arise during all conversations will be wrapped up by Juba, and we will have time for a final discussion on these topics. So yeah, that's about the program, and let's get to Juba Boshoff. Please, Juba, take the floor.
Thank you very much, Matthijs, and good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be joining you this morning from South Africa. I'm sitting here in the embassy in Pretoria, And I am very eager to see where some of you are sitting at the moment. So we will shortly do a post. As Matthijs said, I'm the head of NISO South Africa, the NAFIC office here in Southern Africa. So we deal with the Orange Knowledge Program in South Africa, Mozambique, Zambia, Tanzania. So Linda, I'm a little bit jealous of you. And Zimbabwe. I know exactly where you are sitting at the moment and the view that you have in Tanzania. So definitely my jealousy is with you. And this morning, our topic of building, I think it's particularly important to notice the verb in this, building sustainable partnerships, is our topic. I joined NAFIC about, well, almost 3 years ago, but prior to my time at NAFIC, I worked at an institution, a knowledge institution here in South Africa, like many of you do. And a large part of my portfolio was on how do you build and sustain partnerships? And how do you choose partnerships? Already in the introduction video, we heard on how important that selection of partnerships are. And so here in my role in NISO South Africa, a very big part of what we do is how do we bring people together and how do we bring the right stakeholders to the table in creating what I had to learn very quickly when I started working in the Dutch, what is the value add? And so I'm really keen this morning to also hear from our presenters, 3 lovely presenters from different parts of the world and with different perspectives to see how is this done in practice. And I am a very pragmatic person, so I also invite you to please make your contributions and the questions that you pose very practical this morning. But as I'm sitting here behind the screen, I am most curious to know, where are you from? So we will start with the first short poll. Which continent? And let's see how diverse this audience is this morning. You'll find the polling right at the bottom. So let's see, how quick can you be? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, Europe is, what is going on? Nobody else. There, some of my, now we are getting there. All right. Let's see how many is in. Excellent. All right. So a large European audience. It's good to see that there are other colleagues in Africa. Linda, I am wondering where you put yourself in this polling today. I did not vote, so I'm not one of the African participants. Great. All right. Good to see. I see not everybody has voted, but we get a good idea that there's a little bit of a European dominance, but even in that, I think we'll have some diversity. All right. So I would also really like to know where are we sitting? Which sectors are we representing in this room? So if we go to the next poll, then we can get an idea of which part of the sector are you in. And I'll leave that to our technical team. Thank you so much, Alco. So in which domain do you work? So university, vocational, NGO, fantastic. I see the private sector also represented, very important also in building public-private partnerships. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to discuss something around public-private partnerships and how that contributes to sustainability. Nice, so a lovely mix that we have here, and I'm certain that this will add great value to our discussion. Then, we know that you are here for the OKP Partner Day. Have you taken part in OKP? Maybe you still want, maybe you are here because you are curious to hear more about this large global program. So can you let us know, how are you involved in OKP? So many institutional collaboration projects represented, not involved yet. We like that. We do hope that after this session, you will be so motivated that you will join the upcoming calls. I also see other, so I'll be curious to know what is other. How do you define other? So if you are one of the others, please clarify yourself in the chat. It would be great to see who else we have represented. All right, so a really good mix of people that have taken part in OKP, and then really good to see also those interested. So moving a little bit closer to our topic today, and because we are so stretched for time in this session, and we really want to hear from you as our participants, we have put some questions on. So please, if you look at those words, can you share with us, if you read them, which of these words resonate with you when you think of partnerships and building partnerships? Working together, the collaboration, mutuality, and complementarity. I'm looking forward for us to also unpack these more and to make them practical. If we say that mutuality and complementarity is important, or that is a word that we associate with partnerships, what does it mean in practice? And we hope that we can get to that. Excellent. Thank you so much. I see the value addition. I see the access to resources. So again, I hope that we can unpack that. Very importantly, knowledge exchange. I had conversations earlier this morning with colleagues here in South Africa, really looking at how do we exchange knowledge between the two countries. So really also eager to hear about those experiences. Thank you so much. Last poll that we want to look at. And this is really also part of guiding our topic today, is we've put together some questions. And we would like you to vote on these questions. What are some of these questions that you would like to explore today? And we will try our best to not only weave it through the presentations, but also address it and open the discussion. So there are some questions. How do you define partnerships? What is a good partnership? How can we improve within OKP? Getting to the practical of how do we sustain partnerships? All right, so quite a mix. Definitely, we have to look at how do we go forward? How can we improve within OKP? And what can we as NAFIC do? Very important for us as an organization also to learn on how do we do this differently, or how do we do this better going forward? Thank you so much all. That really gives us a lot of good ground to work on. So when I was thinking about this session in how do we look at partnerships? One of the first things that came to my mind is, how do we build partnerships? What if we think of a partnership, what is it? And I went to my dear friend, Mr. Google, and when I looked up the definition of a partnership, it really came, of course, from a business perspective, but it said two bodies, it can be an organization, it can be different people, that make a specific agreement where they agree to work together to advance mutual interest. And for me, that is really also encapsulated in everything that you have said up to now in your responses to the polls, in how do we do this. But I would like us to even make it more practical and get some input from our actual partners. And so I'm going to ask Henk and Nusrat, one in Bangladesh, one in the Netherlands, to please share with us what their experience with partnerships have been. So Henk and Nusrat, if you are ready, it's over to you.
Thank you very much. I will go first. I'm Nusrat Aman, the CEO of Ayat Education and Ayat Skill Development Center in Dhaka, Bangladesh. We work with a capacity development of marginalized youth in Bangladesh in different sectors, including healthcare and vocational training. In 2018, we had the wonderful opportunity to engage with VU and develop a project titled Stitch. As you can see, it is a SRHR tailor-made information and training to contribute to occupational health and safety conditions of the factory workers in ready-made garments industry in Bangladesh. Next slide, please. This project involved developing an SRHR training manual specific to the target group, keeping in mind the cultural sensitivity and the breadth of the prior knowledge they had about the topic. During the course of our program of developing the curriculum, we learned that with our partners as well, that it was very important for us to adopt to agile creativity in this case, where we learn in small steps and make changes based on those learnings. We realized that if we developed a curriculum with a subject expert, but we did not take into account the cultural sensitivity of the end beneficiaries, in this case, the garments workers themselves, and we did not consider the sensitivity of the garment owners who would be the paying customers for this specific program, this program may not be sustainable beyond the life of the project. It is important for any project to practice cultural intelligence and learn from the norms of various cultures and communities. And hence reciprocity of knowledge and experience is extremely important. Mutual respect. When partners from Global North, such as yourselves, realize that partners from Global South can also bring a lot to the table in terms of knowledge sharing, learning from experiences, and succeeding in spite of challenges, and working in resource-constrained settings, we can have a mutual, respectful relationship, and that would make a partnership more strong and more resilient. And when we talk about equal partnership, can it really be equal if your partners don't have a seat at the table to discuss the financial aspects of a project? And can it be equal if we do not have equal accountability? We often feel that our time and efforts are not being seen as equal contribution to that of yours. If we can bring experiences to the table, we should also share discussions on financial allocations and budget, and we'll take responsibilities of effectively using those budgets. Next slide, please. So when we talk about sustainability, for any project to have impact or a lasting change in the society, it must be sustainable beyond the life of the project. And that is a core requirement of NAFIC-funded projects such as well. Our experiences in this project of Orange Knowledge Program and other projects that we have been participated in made us realize that it is important to plan for activities beyond the life of the project. I think, can you take the next box, please? It's really important to identify the pain points during a project and work on to solve those problems. To achieve that, the terms of engagement in partnership must be more fluid. Identifying pain points during a project and using cultural intelligence to truly understand the end beneficiaries is a key aspect to making a project sustainable. Listening to the local partners and learning from the experience is also an important part of making a project sustainable. For example, with the Stitch project, we realized that if we want this project to have a lasting impact on the community, we must make sure the curriculum is culturally sensitive. Second, we must convince the garments owner that this training will improve working conditions for their workers and increase productivity and reduce absenteeism. Third, we have to create evidence that in fact a project such as this is beneficial for everyone concerned and make it a program which will be part of the system. This will then make the program achieve medium and long-term sustainability. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that some projects face more challenges than others, and some projects have more prospects than others. If the partnership's terms of engagements would allow for a more fluid agreement where each project is dealt on a case-by-case basis and using small steps to incorporate the learning into the project, allow for partnership to be more equal, including financial allocation, accountability, and sharing knowledge, the project will truly experience equal partnership. Midterm and long-term sustainability need to be brought to the table for discussions and have some activity plans beyond the life of the project. On all of us here in the Global South, I thank you for this opportunity. And now I invite Hank to continue the presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nusrat. I'm just picking up on things that you have already said. Can I see the next slide, please? Partnership is a concept that is often misused, or in particular, the concept of equal partnership. It's easily used in the rhetoric about international cooperation, but at the end of the day, when you're equal partners, should you not have also an equal say about how to spend the budget, at least partially? So an experience that we have in the STITCH project in Bangladesh, as well as a number of other projects funded by NAFIC. When we discuss, for instance, the issue of curriculum review with local partners, and I had that experience yesterday, as a matter of fact, with the OKP project in Ethiopia. We were discussing designing new training courses. And then one of the focal persons in the project was asking, yeah, we will have probably some problems if we ask our staff to put in time to work extra hours on top of the regular office hours. They are expecting some financial compensation. And of course, usually we refer to the NAFIC OKP rules and regulations. But isn't that a fair question? If staff members put in extra time for project activities, should there not be a possibility for financial compensation as well? Is this also not about partnership? Well, let's put that up for discussion. Next slide, please. And very soon, the Orange Knowledge Program will come to an end. And we are also looking a little bit forward to what is next. And of course, we hope that there will be a successor to the OKP. So this is also an opportunity to discuss particular financial instruments that could be introduced to support sustainable and equal partnerships in the future. And in the polls, it was shown that some people affiliate the term partnership also with knowledge sharing. So we would like to plead for incentives for reciprocity in partnership relations. And could NAFIC also offer particular financial instruments to facilitate the transfer of knowledge and skills from the global south to the global north? So the classical paradigm is that the Dutch service providers are supposed to facilitate the transfer of knowledge from the north to the south. And the other way around is only happening to a limited extent. And introducing financial instruments could change around that paradigm. Next slide, please. And I'm referring to what Nusrat has already said, that very often partnerships are seen as static constructs, static concepts. that could be seen in a more fluid and flexible way. Of course, when we write a project proposal for NAFIC, we are expected to put in figures in the logical framework, also with regard to the sustainability of institutional partnerships. And then we include, for instance, a number of memorandum of understandings to be signed. But a memorandum of understanding is an important document, but is no guarantee for sustainable long-term institutional collaboration. So it's only to a limited extent possible to plan sustainable partnerships ahead of time. And I also believe that there are continued collaborations after the end of a project, but maybe in a different way than NAFIC is always expecting. Let me give you one example that in a number of cases, we continue the collaboration with individual scholars of partners in the Global South, but not necessarily in capacity building projects, but for instance, in evaluation studies, when we look for experts in particular fields to work with us to conduct evaluation studies. And in such a way, one can also continue collaboration, but in a completely different way than within the framework of a NAFIC funded project. So I think it's good to look on this phenomenon also in a little bit more flexible way. And maybe there is a way for NAFIC also to monitor this after the end of a project. Because often it goes unnoticed that this kind of collaboration is continued. And the last thing I would like to say, of course, there are so many factors that determine the chances of a long-term institutional partnership after a project. In the end, it's all about people, I believe. So you may have memorandum of understanding in writing, but at the end of the day, it's also about personalities and how people collaborate with each other, and also experience that in a positive way. Thank you so much. This was all from my side.
Thank you very much, Henk and Nusrat. Very important points there. Thank you. We also take at heart your comments towards what NAFIC can do, and I want us to explore that a little bit more really in today. So a few things that struck me in what you both posed is also around the expectation management in building and developing a partnership. And I want to ask you, do you have some experiences on how do you balance this, what is sometimes perceived, Henk, and you also mentioned that only global north to the global south. How have you gone about in your partnership? Because the fact that both of you are here also says that you are willing to work together beyond the scope of the project. Is how have you managed to deal with these expectations from different stakeholders? And for our audience, how can we learn from that in future projects?
Nusrat, you would like to kick off?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Huba, for that very important question. I think in our journey, what we have a fantastic partnership with VU. May I just first say that, because they are understanding, and we have worked together on developing the curriculum. We have addressed the issues. We have worked together to respect each other's needs and understanding. And sometimes we have actually compromised the length of the time that we're engaged in each of the steps. So partnership comes with reciprocity. It also comes with a lot of compromise and mutual understanding. So when you are trying to make something really work, you have to put in that effort. You have to be willing to compromise at some point. And someone was talking about additional time put in by staff, which is not, used by remuneration. So that's something that there is no system of providing per diem from NAFIC to the beneficiary, as we are called. But then we, from our perspective, we are willing to put in the time to make the project work. And we understood what we got into when we entered the project. But at the same time, as we are developing steps into the project, we are realizing that sometimes it is really, it requires more than we can give without, if we don't want to compromise the quality of the program that we're trying to produce, we need to sometimes give more than we thought that we would have to. In those cases, it's important if we have some scope for reworking the process. Hank?
Yeah. If I may add to that, I think what is very important, and you used the term managing expectations, Yuba, I think that's very much applicable in the Stitch project as well as other projects. I think it's also fair to discuss that, first of all, of course, the grant conditions and obligations, and we cannot go around that, but that doesn't mean that that will shut the door. So in the interaction, I think Nusrat has had most discussions on these issues that we have presented now with my colleague Esther Den Hartog. And Esther also brought that back home, that there were discussions with our partners in Dhaka on these issues. And then we find out that these issues about having a seat at the table on how to spend a budget is not just an isolated case in the Stitch project in Bangladesh, but that kind of discussion is emerging in many other cases. And then we try to come to a dialogue with IAT Skill Development Center and see how we can accommodate within the grant rules and conditions, and at the same time see whether we can undertake other initiatives to put this issue on the table, either with NAFIC or other organizations, as well as other Dutch service providers involved in other projects, because apparently it's an issue that comes up in other cases as well. So sometimes I must admit we use the OKP grant conditions and obligations also as something to take a position, because that's by contract we are obliged to comply with, but that's not the end of the story. And I must say each and every project is a different story. So in terms of partnerships, there's never a one-size-fits-all approach. Every time you have to discuss and see where you can find common ground to have a productive relationship.
Thank you very much, both Henk and Nusrat. I see Tom. Tom, actually, you are, of course, on our sideline to contribute. So maybe you want to come in directly. Tom is posted in the chat box, but he's also been involved. So Tom, if you want to come in, please give me a sign and then we'll do that. We've noted the grant conditions. We take it seriously. I've made an action point on my list of the summary tasks for after this. But I want us to also look at, when we talk about equality, what makes a partnership equal beyond the financial? I'll park that because I see Tom has appeared. Tom, can I hand that over to you?
Yeah, I see a lot of comments about paying and money, and also about the sustainability of the partnerships. In our experience, actually a partnership is not bound to a project period, either before or after. So in the preparations, I already indicated that some of the best partnerships that we have go back a long time, and they're not bound to stop at any moment that the project finishes. So that is a first. What we feel is most important is that in your partnerships and in the discussions with the colleagues that we have on both sides, is that there is an absolute mutual interest in the collaboration that you have, and that can sometimes be supported by project funding, but it also has to have a somewhat more generic motivation, if you like. So, and of course, money is an important issue. So when you work in really sustainable partnerships, this is going both ways. At the moment, actually, we are not the ones that are inviting partners to participate in projects that we are submitting a proposal for, but they are inviting us to become part and parcel of their consortia. And then they are in the driver's seat, and they lead the consortium, and they lead the discussions, and that's working absolutely fine.
Thank you very much, Tom. I wanted us to look a little bit more at what makes partnerships equal, but that is such a good point to actually pivot to Linda on what goes beyond project. Linda is with Hanze. I've had the pleasure of spending some time with her in Dar es Salaam last year. So Henk and Nusrat, thank you again. We will definitely come back to you at the end, so please don't disappear on us. And Linda, with that, I am handing over to you. Don't think we can hear Linda.
Yeah, I think now you can hear me. Okay, I'm waiting for the presentation. Thank you very much. Okay, good morning or afternoon or maybe evening to everybody. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share the example of Hanze University of Applied Sciences in Groningen and how we are trying to build sustainable partnerships. Next sheet. I think the sheets are going a bit slow, but let me try not to slow down also. Hanze University of Applied Sciences is situated in Groningen. Maybe for the ones who are not from the Netherlands, we are situated in the very north in a province called Groningen, and also the city is called Groningen. Next slide, please. Some background information about Hanze University. We are a University of Applied Sciences. That means we only provide bachelor and master programs, and we don't provide PhD programs. And I think this could also make us a good partner for TVET colleges because we focus more on education than on research. And we are known for entrepreneurship, renewable energy, and healthy aging. Next slide. So who am I? I work in capacity building projects for about 25 years now, with a special focus on TVET education and the African continent. And I'm also the founder of the Hanze University Foundation. I will talk a little bit more about it later. And my background is in communication and media. Next slide. So it started like 25 years ago when Hanze University was somehow connected to Okp Projects, and we implemented our first TVET project with a TVET college. And after 10 years, we were asking ourselves, what is the impact of all these projects on the education of Hanze University? And if it has no impact, why are we continuing with this activity? So we had some nice MOUs. I think Henk was also talking about it. But the question is, what are you going to do after the project is over? If there are no exchanges of students or staff, then I think that's not really something you are looking forward to. So we had an idea about how to sustain these partnerships. Maybe it sounds a bit strange, but give it a name. We had some projects in some different faculties, but there was not really a connection between it. And then for the TVET colleges who are listening to this presentation, that was not a big office. This was 2 persons with like a part-time job in this kind of activities. So it was not something very, very big. And then you need to have a kind of plan. And of course, in that plan, you also have to talk about funding. What is the investment of the university and what can you get back from this project? And you have to be realistic about it. 100% is, I think, very, very difficult if you want to do it in a sustainable way. And the last thing we did is creating our own foundation. The next slide. So we created the Hans University Foundation. This is not about big money, but this is about building sustainable partnerships. The foundation is, of course, affiliated with our university, and we receive some funding from employees, students, and companies. And we talk about 50 to 100,000 euro per year. If you compare this to Nuffic projects, it's very, very little. It's not much money you can spend. But what can you do with this kind of money? You can sponsor small staff scholarships, maybe 1 to 3 weeks for people coming to the Netherlands to be with us for a while. We support sometimes tuition fees of students who are very smart but simply don't have the money to either start or to finish their study program. And we support some small, we have some small investments in skills labs, incubation centers, or for example, an energy center. Next slide. So after 25 years, where are we now? First, when we talk about the partners we have on TVET level, and later on, I will talk about the partners we have on university level. So we have 4 main partners. Of course, we also have some more participating partners, but our 4 main partners, we provide them with funding from our foundation. We also organize Hansa staff trips. So that means a group of Hansa staff members on their own cost is traveling to one of our partners to share knowledge. And that is not in the traditional Nuffic way, like there is this staff member of the Netherlands and is giving a kind of seminar for participants in the South. No, it is just 2 weeks work together. Learn from each other, see how you are teaching, how you can improve your teaching, and also what the people from Hans University can learn. This also resulted in a number of OKP projects. Oh. I'll read, internet is not read. Sorry, can you go back, please, 1 slide? So we were granted 2 OKP projects and also 1 TMT project. And the TMT project is not, it's not a project that we have with the TVET college, but in that particular project, our partner is the supporting partner. Next slide. And this is because maybe it's a bit boring to listen to me for such a long time. So this is just an idea how we are dealing with the projects with TVET colleges. Very, very practical approach when we talk about the implementation of these projects. And then you can also see when you talk about COVID, how difficult it is for us to continue the way we are implementing the projects if we cannot be physically there or they cannot physically visit the Netherlands. Next slide, please. So next to the relations to the TVET colleges, we also said with 2 universities in southern countries, we want to create strategic partnerships. And of course, this is also including Hans University Foundation, but we also found some grants for staff exchange, grants for small research projects, and also again, some OKP projects in the TMT area. Next slide, please. So I think how to answer that question, how to build sustainable partnerships within OKP so that more impact is created after the end of the program. I think that is something what we are not asking ourselves. Sorry, please close the door. We don't want to wait for OKP because we think that a partnership is also there when there is no money involved. But then it has to be part of the policy of the institution, of course. And I think this is where it all started with. Is your institution, your university, your college really interested in these kind of partnerships? And if so, what kind of money they want to invest in these partnerships? And I think it's also very important to have some small seed funding because it's not easy to stay connected when there is no money involved. And I think also something what we could do as Dutch institutions is come up with innovative solutions. Because we all have to work on SDGs, we also have to work on corporate social responsibility. We are working on staff competences. I think all of this could also be part of building these sustainable partnerships. And I think as last but not least, you have to invest in a relationship with board members, because these activities like partnerships with partners in the South is easily forgotten when they are writing plans like strategic plans for the university. So you have to constantly knock on the door and tell them that these are very important partnerships. Also to learn yourself, your staff members can also learn a lot from these particular partnerships. Next slide, please. This was it for now. And this is not only me, it's the team where I'm working with. And now to spice up a bit the presentation, we have a small video in where our partners are telling why they want to be connected to Hans University, what is important for them in this relationship.
Higher education is so important to society. It forms employment possibilities. It bridges borders and creates equal opportunities. This is the Hanze University of Applied Sciences in Groningen, the Netherlands. Since 1995, our capacity building projects for higher education focus on skills training through short courses, workshops, and, for example, summer schools. We work with vocational schools, colleges and universities to create curricula based on the needs of society.
Most of them are able to get jobs, or others are able to create jobs for others. As a person who has received this scholarship, and then also as a technician, then of course I have to serve my community and then serve also my family.
It's not just about the grant, but also about the partnership with the Hanze itself.
With these partners, we developed 56 curricula, trained more than 560 individuals for 35 NUFIC projects in 12 countries. We're really committed to our long-term strategic partners.
This is very beneficial to my students, and so I think it's a very long-term effect.
And to ensure continuity beyond project funding, we established the Hanze University Foundation. This foundation mobilizes the Hanze community to support our partners.
I think the knowledge and skills I gained from Hanze University of Applied Sciences has helped me a lot in managing these institutions, all the institutions that I've led ever since I left Hanze University.
I didn't know that the people who are already associating with me, they have already seen that potential in me. My future is very bright.
Share your talent and move the world.
Thank you very much, Linda. It was really good to see this bird's eye view on how Hanze approaches partnerships. One thing that I would like you to share a little bit more is you mentioned the start of strategic partnerships. And what I specifically noted is how you've linked different instruments. But I would like to really know, and I'm sure our audience would like to know as well, how did you decide on which partners will be your strategic partners? And was it we start with a new partner, or how did you go about that process?
I think this is not something which you can put on paper before you starting this. It's a process. So you work with partners, you get to know each other, and then at a certain moment you decide that you have a lot in common, so you can become strategic partners. And I think it also has a lot to do with the countries. Not all the countries in not all the countries is possible to do exchange of staff and students because of safety issues. So of course the selection had to do with, is it possible to do exchange in these countries? For us also language is an issue because our students are not all able to speak something else than English. But most important was that we are looking a bit like each other. So these are also universities who have also focus on educating students for the labor market and not so much concentrating on research.
Fantastic. So that similarity in what you aim to do. I've noted a question by Henk. Henk, maybe you want to pose the question directly to Linda instead of me reading it.
Thank you so much, Yuba, and also thank you, Linda, for your excellent presentation. I see a similarity between our university and Hanze Hogeschool in the sense that we also have a Center for International Collaboration, which is very conducive in maintaining and facilitating international partnerships, which is a good thing, whereas not like 20 years ago, more Dutch universities had such a center, but very few have survived. So good to see that Hanze Hogeschool has established such a center as well. What you were sharing with us triggered a thought. Higher education institutes are no monoliths. So you can have a Center for International Collaboration, but as in our case, we have faculties and research groups, and we have an executive management. And if you really want to sustain institutional partnerships, then it takes a long way to keep everyone on board, in particular in periods when there is no outside funding. And we also have a number of strategic partners in a select number of countries, including South Africa, with whom we maintain a collaboration and partnership, even if there are no project supporting that. So I was wondering, how is that in your experience? You're also working with different disciplines within your hogeschool, and also with the executive management. How do you involve other entities within your institution?
Yeah, I think for that, this Hanze University Foundation is very important, because this is like owned by everybody. For example, around Christmas time, you always get a Christmas hamper. I think it's a very Dutch idea of sharing Christmas. So we ask everybody from every faculty, from every department to, instead of having this Christmas hamper, to donate a 25 euro to the foundation. So then somehow everybody is involved. And if you have a project from a single department, only that department is involved. So I think the trick is to find something which is interesting for everybody, also the ones who are not traveling. And of course, what we do is in the board of Hanze University Foundation, we also have members of the board of Hanze University. And then we have also a kind of committee, which is even above that, And then we also have, you know, important people from the Groningen community. We put them in that board. So everybody is connected, even though they are not very active, because we don't need to have a lot of input from them. But supporting this foundation, I think, brings everybody at the same table.
Thanks for sharing that. Yuba, could we ask other participants also to maybe share some of their experiences, how they do this?
Of course, I think what I'm also hearing from this is that this way of working, Linda, is also really part of the value system of the institution. And I think, Henk, that's always something that when it becomes so partial of the value system, that it becomes easier in a way, not easy, easier. But yes, any other comments on this? Who else has experiences of linking it? And here I'm also looking at some of my fellow Africans, Nusrat, other parts of the world. How do you see it? So maybe while people are thinking about this, as I mentioned to you earlier in the session, I used to work for Stellenbosch University. And one of the key focuses at Stellenbosch University was how do we go beyond establishing partnerships with European universities to also work on the African continent? Because in South Africa, we are fairly familiar with working with institutions that are outside of the continent. And it was a very intentional and intensive process to work on the continent. And if you look at South Africa, not only Stellenbosch institutions, but there's really more of a mutual interest now in working on the continent. So anybody else that would like to share on how do you really make this part of the DNA of the institution? Also feel free. I don't see anything coming up in the chat, so I'm gonna hook it there, and as it goes along, I see Pam. Pam, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you. I think it's a really important point that for me, a partnership, because it's beyond what happens in the Netherlands. It's very important that this partnership is across countries and that there is equality there. And so one of the things that the Royal Tropical Institute works on is also to have the alumni who've been supported by the NUFIC program on scholarships, to involve them also in this partnership. And the International Course for Health and Development has been running for over 50 years. So this means that there is a very wide network of alumni who are also being brought on board in these partnerships and who we work with on different type of projects, but also for raising funds for future students, so that they can also support that fellow new students can also take part in this course. And I think that's also important that we think beyond the Netherlands, as you were also saying. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam. I think really important. How do we make other stakeholders part of this partnership? It's not only two institutions, it's the alumni, it's the local communities, and how do we make sure that people contribute and indeed that contributes to the long-term impact of this partnership. Bashar, you made a comment on how do we continue to perform and to deliver in the absence of primary funding. And I think it really speaks to both Henk and Nusrat's presentation, but also Linda's presentation on how do we build institutional partnerships and long-term partnerships. Would you like to expand a little bit on that comment?
Sorry about my comment. I raised the idea of the collaboration between the partner and make organization for extend or to deliver the benefit for all the target group. So we can build a small organization like an institute and make, for example, as a service provider for or knowledge provider for all the partners, including any technical, scientific, or any research, and we can make a benefit from this information for all the partners through extending the knowledge, extending the business. Maybe in future, if we can make this organization based on a business-based system. So I think this is idea for me for sustainable partnership after ending of the project funding.
Thank you very much. I think it links good to a point that Henk made earlier in the session in how do we create instruments for more transfer and exchange of knowledge from the global south to the global north. So really thinking of what is also the structure that we can put in place beyond the life span of a project. And maybe we can explore that idea of instruments a little bit more. Henk, maybe you already have an idea. Maybe the rest of the audience have an idea. What could such an instrument look like? If we are talking about learning and dreaming about a future program between the Netherlands and partner countries, what does that look like when we say we are tipping it the other way around?
Thank you, Yuba. Well, first of all, to a limited extent, we are also already doing this. So suppose that, you know, COVID-19 will be away in a few months' time, and we will organize a meeting with all the Bangladeshi partners in Amsterdam. Then we probably invite Nusrat also to give a guest lecture to our students. We are offering, for instance, an honors course on international development. And on a regular basis, we invite partners from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America to speak to the students, which is a unique experience for the students. Because when I or another lecturer is talking about developments, for instance, in Bangladesh or Eastern Congo, it's really a difference than when somebody is talking about this, who's actually from that area and has experiences on the ground. So, for instance, travel grounds could be a possible instrument next to other facilities in the budget to promote that. And what would also be fantastic, really, if it's not just individuals, but maybe Nusrat in this case could bring also some of her lectures or even students, so that we could have an exchange between our students and their students. So I think in that sense, it's also creating a support base, at least within our university, also to be involved in this kind of programs like the Orange Knowledge programs. And actually, we're already using the Erasmus Plus mobility grants to also invite staff members of partner organizations in the Global South to visit us next to project visits. So to some extent, there is already the possibility, but I think we could explore this further in future NAFIC-funded projects.
Fantastic. I like that idea of a travel grant. Nusrat, you indicated that you would like to add to that?
Yes, I actually did want to add a little bit to that. I think, Hank, that was wonderful point. Two things I wanted to mention was that the exchange of students. I thought that's a fantastic idea. I mean, for the STEACH project especially, we've had some of our instructors actually travel to Amsterdam last year to work with the team at VU to do some learning, and they brought that knowledge back here, and we were implementing that. But it would be nice to have some exchange students from Netherlands to come here as well and learn from us on the ground here, the practicality of different kinds of projects. That was one. The second thing I wanted to add was that, you know, to extend partnership beyond the life of the project, it's always a great idea to involve institutions within the country. Like you were saying that you engaged institutions from within Africa. Here, I think to include public sectors and regularized bodies, associations, which we have done in the Stitch project, similar to that. If you have engagement from those projects and you are able to incite interest in them, and they take the project in, that's how the project will sustain beyond the life of the project and beyond the assistance of foreign grants and foreign donorship, if we can find that strong footing on ground here locally. So there's two things I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nusrat. Yes, one thing maybe to also note here is how different instruments are starting to work together to utilize Erasmus Plus for the mobility of staff and students, to look at other EU funding streams for a follow-up project, or maybe you find in this project that there are other aspects that you would like to look at, and really to see how these funding mechanisms complement one another. I saw a very interesting comment from Gert-Jan in the chat box on PhDs. Gert-Jan, maybe you can share a little bit. I see that you are sitting in Zimbabwe, so also good to have that building bridges perspective. So maybe you can share a little bit around your idea of getting Dutch PhDs to other parts of the world.
Yes, greetings from Masvingo, Zimbabwe, and I'm involved with the Great Zimbabwe University and the National University of Science and Technology, and also with Leiden University, but also with Hans. Actually, we have worked together, and some remote, but also we have seen that the best benefit was there when there was real exchange. And actually, we were very encouraged by students coming for an extended period of time and just participate in the curriculum of the local universities. And they did that part of their masters. Yeah, I was very encouraged to see how their masters came to a certain depth that I've not often experienced, the local knowledge, Ubuntu culture, for instance, which is very important, the importance of community. And I've seen that the students, when they came back to the Netherlands, were able to contribute, for instance, to the position of participatiemaatschappij, a very important discussion that can be informed by African cultures. And actually, I talk with lots of professors on this side, and there's lots of interest of students from Europe to come to Africa and to do their PhD in the African communities, or with the university, or in combined PhDs. And that's really something that's being developed here all the time. So why are only students going to Europe, but also it could be beneficial for European students to come to Africa and do their full study here, and maybe do it combined with other universities. These are still concepts we have been exploring, but we have not seen those methods implemented in OKP yet, but that would be really welcomed here by professors, because this in South Africa and in Zimbabwe and several other countries are, Uganda, Kenya, there are really good, high quality universities that are worth also pursuing a career in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gert-Jan, for that. Really important, I think, for you that have worked on the continent and in the region, really to see how we make sure that there's mobility to the African institutions. So I'll also make a note in my own ear for our own project here in South Africa with the NRF. I see a lot of interesting comments come through. Pam, I think you had your hand raised. You made a comment, but maybe you also want to say a little bit more in how you have been linking different projects and different funding instruments?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't us. It was Fu who really reached out actively to kids, to the Royal Tropical Institute, in being more of this coordination between the Stitch project that was presented and the We Care program, which is training, working with the Training Institute Newport in Bangladesh, and working on the curricula for health providers, hands-on health providers in the country. And they have really proactively looked at how we could more coordinate our efforts, and how we could therefore also, trying to see what kind of curricula we are developing and whether we can share that, but also by involving us, kids, in the training that was done for the Stitch partners when they came to the Netherlands. So partly that took place at VU, partly that took place at KIT, which also then makes that we are also then in touch with these partners involved in the Stitch program. And I think that is I really applaud VU for doing that, for trying to have that coordinated and broaden the partnership therewith. Because also one of the things that in these institutional programs we want to achieve is that there's a wider network for the country partners, and so that is also being facilitated through this process.
Fantastic. It's so wonderful to hear all these examples and to hear how you are starting to think about how do you link different instruments, be it within OKP or combining OKP with other funding instruments. Of course, you saw Jolie's comment also in the chat box that we also have some restrictions from where does the money come from, and that also where the tail wags the dog a little bit. I noted that Linda has another idea on what comes after OKP. Linda, maybe you can share that with us.
Yeah, maybe what could be an idea for the next, so say OKP2 in when it's will come alive. I think what worked very well is that we every year we are organizing a summer school. Until now it was in Tanzania, where we have like 10 to 50 students from the Netherlands, and they work with 10 to 15 students in Tanzania on topics which is interesting for both of them. And of course, we find some money in Hans University Foundation to do that. But I think this concept, if you create a study program in an OKP project, then why are you not creating it for students from both sides? And also see if that works, if it's interesting for students from both sides. So maybe these kind of small, say, student scholarships from both sides would also be added to OKP, because now I think OKP is really about capacity building. So we are creating a lot of study programs, but then is that only for the partner in the South, or are these programs also interesting for students from the North? And I think then you're really talking about equality, and you're talking about creating programs which are, say, worldwide programs and not only local programs.
Thank you very much, Linda. So really closing that loop on how do we make sure that however we approach a partnership, it's two-way in all aspects. I want to ask Nadine. Nadine made a comment about having the Southern partner as the lead partner. And of course, this is something that falls within the OKP grant, within the OKP conditions, but I would like to hear a little bit more about that and to hear about your experience of how you go about that, because I think it adds a lot of value to our first two questions on what can NAFIC do to actually make partnerships sustainable. So Nadine, I hope you are still on the call and that you can share a little bit about your experience with putting the Southern partner in the lead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect, loud and clear.
Okay,
thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Yeah, that was just a remark of me that in our institutional grant, Health E Foundation that I work for has a long-term collaboration with the Midwife Association in Ethiopia. And when we were seeing the opportunity for an OKP grant, and of course the criteria to apply for this grant was, one of them was the COCA. I think all of you are familiar. And we just noticed that it made much more sense to put EMWA, the Midwife Association in Addis, as a lead applicant in that respect. So that was, I think that worked out really, really well. I think Jolie, our coordinator at NUFIC, can testify that it's not all that easy for the procedures. But I think in terms of, you know, thinking of partner equality, it is definitely something that contributes, you know, and yeah, that Ethiopia, of course, now even more than ever is a difficult country also for the financial transactions and everything. So in that respect, it's not the easiest way, but I think in terms of what we are discussing this morning, it's definitely part of the deal, I would say.
Thank you very much, Nadine, and thank you for taking the road less traveled. We know it's not always easy, but we are also very happy to hear that this has been a good experience for you, and we hope that we can build on that. We asked you in the beginning 2 questions, and the 2 questions that really came out as the top is, how can partnerships be improved by OKP? So I think that is something that we've looked at. I think one of the things that we've noted is that we have to reflect a little bit as an organization on our grant conditions and how enabling are those grant conditions for creating equal partnerships. You've stated very interesting things around different types of mobility to consider. And then again, reflecting, is it possible within this program, or are there other programs that can be complementary to the OKP program? But are there any other questions or ideas that you would like to put to us? Many of my NAFIC colleagues are also in the audience in terms of what can we do as an organization to support you as implementers to develop sustainable partnerships? Any last closing ideas that somebody would like to put on the table? I see Linda's typing. Linda, you can also speak.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think flexibility is extremely important, because when you start with a project, you have a certain idea about the world around you. But I think COVID is a good example, but I think also outside COVID, you need to be extremely flexible during the implementation, because sometimes you're working on something and also other donors are working on something, so you have to reorganize your project. So I think for me that flexibility is the term.
Noted. Henk, yes, you may.
Yes, I just would like to support Linda with this one. Maybe also in the successor to the current Orange Knowledge Program, we could reconsider the logical framework, because that is so rigid in many ways. I understand that there are some administrative, bureaucratic challenges also to account for the investment by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I do acknowledge that there is a need to be accountable to show results and impact of NAFIC funded projects. But in certain ways, we have to look again at the whole idea of flexibility and fluidity of in particular, institutional partnerships. I hope that's clear.
Yes, thank you very much, Henk. We take that to heart, the flexibility in the thinking and the doing. I noted another colleague that said that they have a lead ICP with a lead partner in Palestina. It's fantastic to hear about these examples, and we hope that we can continue to build on these practices. Our colleague Marijn put very interesting information for you in the chat on the European Commission's capacity development grant. I have worked on one of these. Henk has worked on one of these in South Africa. So these are really wonderful mechanisms to build long-term sustainable partnerships. Yes, it's tricky. It's if you struggle with some of the NAFIC regulations, the EU can give you another run for your money. But the impact is really very, it's worth it. Let me say it's worth it. Some closing comments. I think a lot of what I've heard today really resonates with the words that we started this session with. It's around reciprocity. It's around compromise. But it's also about responsibility and accountability for all partners. And I think what we've seen illustrated today is really that there is the willingness from different partners to learn from one another and to have that reflective practice where we put that in back into what we are doing. So it's not only stays on paper, but that we make this part of the philosophy of how we go about building international partnerships. So from my side, thank you very much. I think we could have gone on for another. I see now wonderful comments coming through. Please be assured that we will collect all of this and also get back to you if there are still outstanding questions. And with that, Matthijs, over to you.
Yes, thank you all very much for your contributions. I would like to thank all the people that gave their fantastic presentations on their observations on the partnerships they have and their views on future partnerships as well. I think this was very interesting, and as Yuba also mentioned, I think we could have continued for even 1.5 hours more. So I think it's a good signal that we have the feeling that it was a short period of time, this session. So please continue to discuss these topics. And please also feel free, if you have any additional questions after these sessions, to email us or contact us in another way. You can also ask us to connect you to people you have met today. I think that's also our role, to connect you to other people. So please feel free to contact us for any kind of question. We will also go through the chat box after this session and see if there were any questions that were unanswered, but please feel free to email us. And it would be also great, as I also put in the chat, I think, if you could fill in the survey on the session, so we know we can learn from the session, of course, as always, and we know what your thoughts are on this session. So once more, I would like to thank you all the participants, for your active participation and discussions in the chat and in the during the Q&A discussions and presentations. And I hope to see you all soon, and good luck with all your activities. And I wish you a very nice rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We will stay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.